Is this on? Good evening, everybody. We'll go ahead and get started. How we, of course, how the Bible and God encourages us. How we encourage those that are less fortunate. This is going to get us into a study of Revelations. Always talked about or heard. I started studying it more in depth and getting going. It's something that gives us a glimpse for the ever after, what's going to happen, and it's God's revelation of what's going to happen. And I think here, with of course 1 week we're doing Vacation Bible School, there'll be probably a singing on the view at this time. So thankful. Fear of persecution. There are some tough things going on in our world. There are some things that happen as they go through this shooting, as they deal with their wrapped in love here, as we go through the rest of our week. Just stay with us. First verse I want to go to is Isaiah chapter 1, verse 17. And plead for the widow. There's a lot of things that we can... That's the beauty of a church family, where kids come in and they're learning and being able to see that godly example every day. And that's kind of what we're talking about when we get into helping people that need help. We go to God in prayer. And that's our opportunity to open ourselves up and to fall back on. Because once again, the words of Stacy Atkins are, I can read and I can put out these words, but if I just had to close this, and let's look at verse 31. Isaiah 4, they shall walk and not faint. You know this. When we look at this, God understands all things. Evil exists. And the idea is by... Now, the third thing, when you look taking Christians out of their home, the trip, he goes blind, all the story of Saul. But there's a reason why we see stories in the Bible where God has done miraculous things, but it didn't always do. In chapter 9, let's look at verse 31. Did he make instant enemies? You betcha. They wanted to, throughout all Judea, Galilee, and Samaria, had peace and were edified and walked preaching the word of Jesus. Once to that point, you weren't really on the devil's radar. He was kind of, maybe he does. And that's why it's really important that we'll get to this next point. As the story unfolds, Spirit to work even greater message. This is probably one of the biggest things. Because, like we talk about, I really don't need to go to church. I can do this. Well, I'll just tell you from experience, you can't. Let's look at Romans chapter 15. The heading of this first part is bearing others' burdens. What a great caption for that section. Please his neighbor for his good, leading to edification, that we, through the patience and comfort of, glorify the God and Father of our Lord Jesus Christ. Do the circumcision of the truth of God to confirm the promises made. And you don't realize how wrong you are. I mean, I grew up in the church. And even if it's not great temptation, it's just also from experience that, hey, I'll go next week. You know what? I'll go next week. Well, that go next week will turn into consider it for others, not be selfish. That's very hard for people to do. Somebody cuts you off. Somebody gets in front of you and they slow down to 50 miles an hour. And you're like, why are you going 50 miles an hour? It's like 70. A lot of times in the car, and I say things that I shouldn't say, and I just look at my... And some of the most volatile, be in traffic with someone and, you know, we're next to each other for 30... Okay, yeah, I'll be there in a little bit or whatever. But kind of start watching people. If you just... So I really have to look. But I'm a looker. I like to look around. I like to see people. I like to see their faces. You get up beside them and they're like, that big white truck. Like, you know, and they finally look at me, I just wave at them. Because you're really not going to have that conversation with somebody in a car. You're not going to be able to talk to them. It's probably never going to encourage them as you go through. Because what if you give them a... You're not going to help the situation by yelling at them in the car. I'd have been blown up. I know. And I've had the same situation where if I would have had a heat sick... You can break the ice. That's your faith. Because if someone is not having a very good day and they are angry with the world, man, I was ready to get mad at you. I've had people tell me that. Man, I was ready to get mad at you. Then you smile. You go to coaching back and start talking to you about that. Like, oh yeah, I got you. I've done it. That kid, he don't have no ammunition left. He's like, you don't think God's right here at school? I had a girl one time, she was cussing up a storm. I mean, saying words that at church? Oh no. I said, well, you know God hears you in school too, right? Oh yeah. Neighbor. Picking something up for someone that dropped something. They may be struggling that day. McDonald's or a Chick-fil-A or any of those, and you get up there and you go, hey, that person behind me, I'm going to roll that bag up, put it over here, and get to school. As soon as I pull out of that parking lot, maybe they don't have the money to pay for somebody behind them. Maybe they're. Does this all come now? To be real honest with you, I've been a school teacher for 30 years, and kids' music it's pretty sickening. We can't listen to that. But if you listen to something, the parking lot can hear what they're listening to. Pleasant human being. It's work that it helps kind of set your mind for the task at hand. And once again, we're talking about being a good neighbor. Being someone. My mom would tell me, I talked to my mom probably 3 times. She could chew me out and make me just really like, I didn't even know it. She would know the way I was acting. She would hear some of the things that I'd listen to, and she would, you listening to that music? Are they cussing? It's about being selfless. Verses 13 through 18. Who have no hope. For if we believe that Jesus died and rose again, even so, with the voice of an archangel remain shall be caught up together with them in the clouds to meet the Lord in the air. And thus we shall. That's why it's about. So they're just kind of talking around. They call it bagging on each other, or just kind of kicking it, if you want to say. Here is, if they're never told about it, They never get the feeling of belonging. Kids especially, they've been through some things. So I remember my dad, I talked to my dad, and I go, Dad, you don't know. You don't know what I'm going through. You're like, I can help you. And that's kind of part of that too, is encouraging the weak and afraid, is ministering to others. He has a plan. He has a plan for us. And that's part of fulfilling that plan, is having that relationship with Him. The last thing, example, and when we go throughout our daily lives, let's be that encouraging person. And we thank you for Jesus, who came down on this. Let us be grateful for this.